Somewhere in this country last night, a car didn't start. Not a dead battery, not a bad starter motor. The engine was fine. A woman turned the key, heard a soft click, and nothing happened because a computer somewhere else had decided that her car was not going to move that evening. Around the same hour, a camera bolted to a utility pole in a town of maybe 11,000 people photographed a pickup truck rolling through an intersection. It read the plate. It logged the color, the body style, the ladder rack on the roof, the sticker on the tailgate, and it filed all of that into a database that a police department 3 states away can search. And in an office building in Washington, a rule that Congress ordered finished by November of 2024 was still sitting there unfinished, more than a year and a half past its own legal deadline. 3 things, 3 dots. And I guarantee you somebody has already drawn a straight line between those 3 dots and sold you a story about what it all means. I'm here to tell you that line is wrong. I'm also going to tell you that what's actually happening is stranger than the story, much harder to argue with, and considerably more useful to you because 2 of those 3 dots are real, documented, and operating on your street tonight. The 3rd one, the one that generates all the shouting, is the one that hasn't happened yet. Let's take them apart one at a time, and then let's put them back together honestly. My name's Ellen. I spent about 30 years inside the American car business engineering first, then the analysis side, reading regulatory filings for a living. I don't do speculation. I do documents. And speaking of documents, I put the ones I lean on most into a short field manual called What the Record Actually Says About Your Car. Total loss, math, repair bills, how your premium actually gets set, what the recorder in your dash captures. You can download it. Links in the description. That's the last you'll hear about it. Now, dot number 1. There's a company called Flock Safety, founded in 2017 out of Georgia. It makes cameras, small ones, solar-powered, usually mounted on a pole about 8 or 10 feet up, often with a little Flock logo you'd never notice at 40 miles an hour. The company says it now operates in more than 5,000 communities across 49 states. It says its network performs over 20 billion vehicle scans a month. 20 billion a month. Here's the number that matters more to me, though, because it wasn't produced by a marketing department. Volunteers around the country have been physically locating these cameras and mapping them. As of the middle of July, that independent mapping had verified 95,923 Flock cameras in the United States. The company itself claims more than 120,000 across 49 states. So roughly 1 in 5 cameras in Flock's own claimed network hasn't been independently found yet. Hold on to that gap. It tells you something about how quietly this got built. Now, what does the camera actually do? Because this is where most coverage goes soft, and the mechanism is the whole story. It is not a video camera. It's not recording footage of you. It takes a still image of a vehicle, and onboard software pulls 3 things out of that image: the plate number, the time, the location. Then it does something more. The company calls it a vehicle fingerprint. The software catalogs the color, the make, the body style, the roof rack, the ladder, the bumper stickers, the damage on the quarter panel, which means an investigator can search for your vehicle without ever having your plate number. Blue crew cab pickup, aftermarket wheels, toolbox in the bed, seen near this intersection on Tuesday afternoon. That capability, searching by appearance instead of by plate, is the part almost nobody understands about these systems. Actually, let me back up. I said a second ago that this isn't a tracker, and I want to be precise about that, because precision is the only thing that separates us from the noise. A tracker is a device attached to your property that reports your position. Nobody put anything on your truck. What exists instead is a fixed grid of stationary readers that recognize your truck every time it passes one. You're not being followed. You're being recognized repeatedly at fixed points, and those recognitions are stored in a searchable file. Is that a distinction without a difference? That's exactly the question a federal court had to answer, and I'll get there. The data doesn't sit forever. Retention is set by state law and by contract. In Virginia, the cap is 21 days, and the Norfolk Police Department held Flock data for the full 21. Some states allow longer. Some communities set shorter windows voluntarily. Officers in Norfolk could query that data without a warrant. That wasn't a loophole they found. That was the policy. So 2 Norfolk residents sued. Lee Schmidt and Crystal Arrington, backed by the Institute for Justice, filed in October of 2024. Their argument: a citywide camera dragnet that captures your daily movements is a warrantless search under the Fourth Amendment. Now, here's where I have to be fair, because this is the part of the story that gets skipped by everyone who wants you angry. They lost. On January 27th of 2026, a federal judge in the Eastern District of Virginia granted summary judgment to the city. The reasoning was specific, and it was not stupid. The court found that Norfolk's system 176 cameras arranged in about 75 clusters captured vehicles only at fixed points on public roads, and that the system had significant gaps. It could not follow a person continuously. It could not document the whole of anyone's movements. So under existing precedent, including the Supreme Court's 2018 decision on cell phone location records, it wasn't a search. And that ruling wasn't an outlier. Courts at the trial and appellate level around the country have repeatedly upheld fixed location plate readers against Fourth Amendment challenges. Which brings me to the Steelman, and I'm going to give it its full weight. The argument for these cameras is that a license plate is, by design, a public identifier. The state issues it, requires you to display it, and every human being who passes you on the road can read it. A camera that reads what any passerby can read isn't intruding on anything private. And these systems have measurably helped close serious cases: homicides, kidnappings, hit and runs, trafficking. Police departments will tell you that a plate hit gave them a suspect vehicle in hours instead of weeks. That is a real argument made by serious people, and it has been winning in court. So why am I still talking about it? Because on June 29th of 2026, the Supreme Court decided a case that has nothing to do with cameras on poles, and it may have changed the ground underneath all of this. The case is Chattree versus United States. It's about a geofence warrant police drawing a digital boundary around a crime scene and asking Google which devices were inside it. The court held that obtaining that location history was a Fourth Amendment search and sent the case back down to the Fourth Circuit on the question of whether the warrant was good enough. Why does that matter to a camera on a pole in Norfolk? Because Schmidt and Arrington appealed, and their appeal is sitting in the Fourth Circuit right now. Their lawyers argue that Chattree shifts the analysis away from whether police happen to search one specific person's data and toward what the technology is capable of collecting in the first place. Capability, not use. Remember that phrase. It's going to come back. I want to be careful here. Cell phone, location data, and license plate cameras are not the same thing, and Chattree does not automatically mean Norfolk loses. Anyone telling you otherwise is guessing. 15 states and the District of Columbia filed a brief on the other side. This is live and unresolved, but it is being litigated in public with case numbers you can look up, and that matters more than my opinion about it. Meanwhile, in California, a different kind of fight. California passed an automated plate reader privacy law back in 2015. Among other things, it says a public agency shall not sell, share, or transfer plate reader information except to another public agency, and California defines public agency as California, state, and local entities. Not federal ones, not other states. In February of 2026, an Oakland law firm filed a class action in San Francisco Superior Court alleging that flock data on California drivers was being shared with out-of-state and federal agencies in violation of that law. The complaint alleges that out-of-state agencies searched the San Francisco Police Department's database more than 1.6 million times in a 7-month period. I need you to hear the word allegation. That's a complaint, not a finding. Nobody has proven that in court. Flock disputes the characterization. Say it with me. An accusation in a filing is not a verdict. What's better documented is the pattern of cities discovering things they didn't authorize. One California city set its access to California only, and a vendor-side issue silently re-enabled a nationwide query feature outside agencies searching without the department's knowledge. The city suspended the program, another city canceled its contract, ordered the cameras removed, and later found some had been reinstalled without permission. By reported counts, something like 53 municipalities canceled flock contracts over unauthorized federal access, and in the same year, close to 800 cities signed new ones. Both of those numbers are true at the same time. That's what a fight looks like while it's still going on. Okay, dot number 2. And this is the one I actually think should worry you more, precisely because nobody's fighting about it. There is a real kill switch. It exists. It's been installed in American cars for over 20 years, and it has nothing to do with the government. It's called a starter interrupt device, in the trade, SID. Here's the mechanism, and it's almost insultingly simple. A small module gets wired into your vehicle's starter circuit, usually behind the dash, sometimes under the seat. Inside that module is a relay, which is just an electrically operated switch, and a cellular modem, the same kind of thing that's in a cheap phone. Very often there's a GPS receiver in there too. When the lender sends a command, the relay opens. The starter circuit is broken. You turn the key and the engine will not crank. Your car is mechanically perfect. It just won't start. Some of these units beep at you as a payment date approaches a countdown you can hear from the driver's seat. Most lenders provide emergency codes, a keypad sequence that buys you a day or two. There have been complaints, going back years, about codes that didn't work. Who has these? Overwhelmingly, subprime borrowers. The New York Times reported roughly a decade ago that the technology was in about a quarter of subprime auto loans nationwide. I want to flag that number, honestly. That's an old figure, and I could not find a current, credible national count. Anyone who quotes you a precise share for today is making it up. What's not in dispute is that the practice is widespread and ongoing. Let me put you in it, because this stops being abstract fast. You're in a grocery store parking lot at 20 minutes to 10 at night. Cold. Bags in the trunk, one of them with ice cream in it. You get in, turn the key, and get a click. You try again. Click. Then you remember the payment that posted late because your paycheck moved, and you dig out the little card with the emergency code, and you punch it in, and nothing happens. You are now standing in a parking lot with a car that is fine, that you have keys to, that is legally in your possession, and that will not move. Now, the steelman. And I want to give this one real weight too, because it's better than people expect. The industry argument goes like this. These borrowers cannot get a loan otherwise. A lender facing a high default rate either charges an impossible interest rate or declines the loan, or finds a way to reduce its risk. The device reduces the risk. Less risk means the loan actually gets made often at a better rate, with a higher loan to value than would otherwise be available. And when someone falls behind, disabling the ignition is a far softer consequence than a repossession. Cure the default and you're driving that afternoon. Get repossessed and you may never get the car back. An executive at one of the telematics companies made exactly that case publicly, and I'll be straight with you. Parts of it land. If the honest alternative is no car at all, and no car means no job, then a beeping relay under the dash is not obviously the worst outcome. Here's the counterargument, and it comes from academic work rather than from advocacy. A law review analysis argued that the device is not a measure of whether a borrower can afford the loan. It's a collection tool bolted onto a loan that may never have been underwritten properly in the first place. The lender's confidence comes from the relay, not from the borrower's finances. And when the relay substitutes for the underwriting, more people end up in loans they can't carry. That's an argument about incentives, not villainy. Nobody had to plot anything. And what's the legal framework around all this? Thin and scattered. California regulates the use of these devices by buy here, pay here dealers with notice and consent requirements. Nevada enacted restrictions. Illinois has tried more than once and not gotten there. Many states have essentially nothing on the books specific to the practice. There is no comprehensive federal rule. So, a private company can install a remote disabled device on a vehicle you're buying under a contract term you may barely have registered in a state that may not regulate it at all. That's dot two. It's real, it's here, and it's governed almost entirely by paperwork you sign at a desk. Dot three. The famous one. You have almost certainly heard that the federal government mandated a kill switch in every new car starting in 2026. That claim has been circulating for years in videos with a lot of red arrows. Here's what's actually in the law. Section 24,220 of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Public Law 117-58, signed November 15th of 2021. It directs the Secretary of Transportation to issue a final rule creating a federal motor vehicle safety standard requiring new passenger vehicles to be equipped with advanced drunk and impaired driving prevention technology. Read the actual words. Advanced Drunk and Impaired Driving Prevention Technology. The statute requires that it be passive, meaning it works without the driver doing anything, which, in the agency's own reading, rules out a breathalyzer you blow into. And it must prevent or limit operation when impairment is detected. There is nothing in that section about remote access, nothing about a government switch, nothing about anyone in an office turning off your engine. The mechanism contemplated is a system inside the car, watching driving performance or detecting alcohol and intervening at the moment of impairment. That's a meaningfully different animal from what people are describing. And here's the part almost nobody reports. The rule doesn't exist. Congress set a deadline of November 15th, 2024. That deadline passed. What the agency has published is an advance notice of proposed rulemaking back on January 5th of 2024 at 89 Federal Register 830. An advance notice is the earliest stage there is. It's the agency asking questions. The docket is NHTSA-2022-0079. As of the middle of 2026, there is no proposed rule. There is no final rule. There's a report to Congress filed in February, and a good deal of frustration from safety organizations who point out that alcohol-impaired crashes killed 12,429 people in 2023, about 30% of all traffic deaths in this country. So the honest scoreboard on the federal kill switch, the mandate people are afraid of, isn't a kill switch, isn't remote, and isn't finished. It's 4.5 years old, 19 months past its deadline, and still at the question-asking stage. Before anyone accuses me of carrying water for anybody, I'm not telling you that section is harmless or that a passive in-car impairment system raises no questions. It raises plenty. A camera watching your face and a system authorized to limit your vehicle's operation are serious things, and the details of that rule, whenever it exists, will matter enormously. I'm telling you, it doesn't exist yet, and that being scared of the wrong thing for 4 years is expensive. It burns the attention you should have been spending on the relay someone already installed under a dash. So let's connect the dots. For real this time. There is no evidence that these three things were coordinated. Different builders, different money, different legal authority, entirely a private surveillance vendor selling to municipalities, a consumer lending practice governed by state contract law, and a stalled federal safety rulemaking. Nobody sat in a room and drew this. And today, they do not touch each other. I want to be extremely clear about that, because it's the exact place where honest analysis and internet nonsense part company. I found no documented case of a plate reader hit triggering a starter interrupt. That connection does not exist. Anybody showing you an arrow between those two boxes is drawing it themselves. What actually connects them is quieter, and I think it's more important. Every one of these systems rests on the same assumption, that a vehicle is addressable, that your car can be identified from outside it, and in some cases acted upon from outside it without you participating in the transaction. Flock built the identification layer. The lending industry built the actuation layer. And the impaired driving rulemaking, whenever it finally arrives, will build a standardization layer, a federal requirement that every new passenger vehicle carry equipment capable of limiting its own operation. Not one of those parties needed to know what the others were doing. Each solved its own problem. But the pieces are shaped so they'd fit, and that's the part worth watching, not because there's a plan, but because there doesn't need to be one. I'm not saying that's the plan, I'm saying that's the capability. Those are two different things, and I will keep saying it until it's boring. So the questions I'd want answered aren't dramatic ones. They're procedural ones, and they're the ones that actually decide outcomes. Who can query the camera database, and is the query logged? Who audits the log, and how often, and does anyone outside the department ever see it? How many days late triggers the relay, and is that in writing? Who has the authority to turn a car's ignition off? And what does someone do at 9:40 at night when the code fails? Those aren't rhetorical. Every one of them has an answer, and every answer sits in a document. Here's what to do with all of this, and then I'll get out of your way. If you want to know whether there are plate readers in your town, volunteer mapping projects have located tens of thousands of them and published the locations. Your city council also had to approve the contract, and council agendas and procurement records are public. Search your city's name along with the words license plate reader, contract, and start reading. Then look up your own state's plate reader statute. Two things matter in it: how long the data is retained and who it can legally be shared with. Those two lines tell you almost everything about your exposure. Then ask your police department, in writing, 3 questions. Does our department use automated plate readers? Is nationwide search access enabled on our system? And who reviews the audit log? Departments answer these. Some publish the answers already. On the lending side, if you're about to sign for a vehicle, ask before you sign, out loud, and get it in writing. Will a starter interrupt device or a GPS unit be installed on this vehicle? If the answer is yes, ask for the notice and consent document, ask how many days past due triggers a disable, and ask for the emergency code policy on paper, not a verbal promise from someone at a desk at 8 in the evening. If you already have the car, pull out your retail installment contract and look for an addendum on GPS or electronic disabling. It's usually a separate signed page. If you can't find it, ask your lender for a copy of everything you signed. You're entitled to your own contract. And on the federal rule, docket NHTSA-2022-0079 on regulations.gov. Free, the advance notice is there, the public comments are there, and the current status is there. Don't take my word for what stage that rulemaking is at. Go look. If it moves to a proposed rule, that docket is where it'll show up first, and the comment period is where ordinary people actually get a say. For the Norfolk case, it's Schmidt versus City of Norfolk, and it's in the 4th Circuit. Court dockets are public. Here's where I land. My own truck is 12 years old and has none of this in it, and I'll admit that colors how I see the whole subject. The picture I'm left with isn't a conspiracy. It's something more ordinary and harder to fight a lot of separate parties, each solving a reasonable problem, each adding one more way for your vehicle to be seen or reached from outside, and no one anywhere responsible for looking at the total. Ownership and control are not the same thing. They never were, but the gap between them used to be small enough that nobody had to think about it. Read the docket. Read your contract. Ask the questions in writing. This has been the Owner's Report.